Hello! Today I am going to be showing you how you can refund your Shopify orders using the Matrixify app. Here I am in my Shopify admin, and as you can see, these are the orders that I have in store. The orders that I will be refunding today are the orders with the tag refund. To begin the process of refunding these orders, we must head to the Matrixify app. The process of refunding these orders is as follows. We first need to export these orders, edit the exported file, and once the exported file has been edited, we will then import it back into Shopify using Matrixify. This would then refund your orders. To start, press the New Export button. Here you will then see a new export page. On this page, we will be able to select what to export. First, starting off with the format. Generally, if not exporting a huge amount of data, we do recommend exporting in the Excel format. However, if you are exporting a very, very large amount of data, we would then recommend exporting it in the CSV format. However, for this type of job, it would be best to use the Excel format to export. Then moving on to what we will actually be exporting. In my case, I already have products here. However, I do not need to export products for this job, so I am going to remove this sheet from being exported. To select orders, press the Select Sheets drop-down and select the Orders checkbox. You can then press the Orders drop-down to reveal all of the column groups that you can export. To refund orders, we do not need to select all of these column groups. The only column groups that we need are basic columns, which are here, so make sure that's selected. We do not need to export customers, we don't need to export companies, but we do need to export line type and line items. We don't need to export line items product data. We do need to export refunds, so make sure that's checked. And in this case, we do not need transactions or fulfillment either, and we don't need meta fields. This isn't to say that you can't export additional data. If it makes the exported file easier for you to understand, you can also export customers or companies or transactions, fulfillments, meta fields, product data, or any of the above. But in this case, I will be showing you how to refund your orders with the minimum required columns. We can then look into exporting only certain columns from these column groups. So for example, for basic columns, you can click the drop down, and we definitely don't need all of these columns to be exported to refund our orders. Again, of course, if easy for you to understand the exported file, you can definitely export them. However, in this case, I will only be exporting the necessary columns to refund our orders. So in this case, I will only be exporting the ID, name, and command columns. These are the only columns you really need from the basic columns group to be able to refund your orders. In regard to line type, line items, and refunds, we will be leaving these column groups as they are and exporting all columns for them. Then moving on to filters. To make our exported file easier to understand, we're going to be adding the filter line type. Go ahead and click on the filter button and select the line type filter. Here we only need to export the line item rows and the shipping line rows, as these are the only two line types that you can actually add a refund for. Again, you can also export all the other line types, but to make the exported file that much more understandable, we will only be exporting these two line types for our orders. So you can then go ahead and press Add, and the filter will be added. As mentioned in the beginning of this video, I will only be refunding the orders with the tag refund. To filter our export to obtain an exported file with only the orders with the tag refund, we need to add the tags filter. So I'm going to go ahead and add the tags filter, set it to equals to any of, and then add the tag I would like to filter by, which in my case would be refund. So now my export will also be filtered by tags. You can also add additional filters to your export if you would like to only export specific orders, but that is definitely not mandatory. You do not need to change any of the export options for this export, so you don't need to touch any of these options here in the options drop-down. You can leave them as they are. And if all looks good and as it should, you can go ahead and press export. You'll now be able to see that my orders have exported. You'll also be able to see that only 3 of my 5 orders have been exported, and that is because we filtered our export by tags to only include the orders with the tag refund. Therefore, only the 3 orders with this tag have been exported. We can then go ahead and press download exported file. You'll be able to see the file downloading, and once downloaded, click on it to open it. Here I am in my exported file. This may look a bit scary to begin with, but don't worry, I will walk you through the file, explain what everything means, and help you get your file ready to import to be able to refund your orders. For this video tutorial, I will be importing all 3 of my orders at once, showing you different scenarios and different ways you can refund. However, a warning, if you are importing refunds for your orders, it is so important that you test with 1 or a maximum of 2 orders to begin with. This is just to be very sure of how the import works and everything works as you expect it to when you import, and that there are no unwanted surprises. As you are working with real transactions for your orders, which in this case would be refunds, it really is better to be safe than sorry. So always best to test with 1 or 2 orders to begin with before going all in with a big bulk import. Now heading back to my file. The first thing you may notice is that even though this file contains only 3 orders, there are a lot more than 3 rows in the file. This is because each order can have multiple rows. So for example, taking the first order I have in my file with the name 1040. This order has 4 rows. The reason for this is because this order has 4 line items and each line item is in its own row. The second order in my file only has 1 row as it only has 1 line item. The third order has 2 line items, but also has a shipping line, which would also be in its own separate row. As I'll be refunding all orders in this file, I need to change the command column value from new to update, so I will go ahead and do that now. If your file contains any orders that you do not wish to refund, they should be removed from your import file, so that your import file contains only the orders that you would like to refund. And then moving on to the line type column. In this column, we need to change the value to refund line for the line items or products in the order that you would like to refund. So in my case, for the first order, I don't want to refund all line items, but only 2 of the line items, in which case, for the line items that I would like to refund, I will change the line type value to refund line. I'll go ahead and do that, and you'll see that there are 2 remaining rows for this order that I do not want to issue a refund for, in which case I'm going to go ahead and remove these rows from my import file. For the next order, I want to refund the only line item that this order has. So I'll go ahead and also rename line item to refund line. For the third order in my file, I would also like to refund everything, including shipping. So again, for the line item rows, I will rename them to refund line. And for the shipping line, instead of renaming that refund line, I'm going to rename that refund shipping. Once you have your line type values changed, we can then move on to the other columns in the file. You'll be able to see all of the other line columns exported, and at the end of the file, you should then be able to see the refund columns that we now need to fill in. Starting with the refund ID column, you can set any kind of number here as a value. For example, the number 1. That way, the app will know it's one in the same refund. Or you can create several refunds within an order by changing the refund ID number and grouping several items into several refunds if you would like. However, in my case, I won't be creating several refunds within an order, so I am just going to add the value 1 for all rows. So I'll go ahead and do that now. The next column you'll be able to see is the created at column. Shopify doesn't allow to import when a refund was created. This means that when you do import, the refund created at date will always be the date of import. This generally is an export-only column, in which case you can delete it from the import file. Of course, you can also leave it in the file, it will just be ignored upon import. In my case, I will delete it from my import file. The next column we can see is the refund note column. This column allows you to add a note to the refund. I will be adding a note to the second order in this file. The note that I will add will just be whole order refund. I won't be adding a note to my other orders, I'll just be adding a note to the second order in my file, as you can see here. The next column is refund restock. This column tells if you would like to restock the line item within the order that you are refunding. In my case, I would like to restock the 2 line items in the first order, in which case I will add the value true to the line items that I do want to restock and false to the line items that I do not wish to restock. The next refund column is refund restock type. This column is used only if the value for the column refund restock is true and if part of your order is fulfilled and the other part of your order is unfulfilled. So basically a partially fulfilled order. This column is used if, let's say, you have a quantity of 6 of one line item and 3 of those items are fulfilled and the other half is unfulfilled. This column will tell the app which half to restock. So if you would like to restock the unfulfilled part, then the value for this column should be cancel. However, if you would like to restock the fulfilled part, then the value for this column should be return. As I only have a quantity of 1 for each of my line items, I don't need a value for this column. So in this case, I am going to leave the column empty, or again, I can also just delete it from my file. But in my case, I'm just going to leave the empty column in my file, as that also really does not change or impact the import in any way in this case. Then moving on to the refund restock location column. This is also a column that you only need to fill in if the refund restock value is true. So in my case, that would be the 2 rows for the order 1040. In this column, you can set the name of the location to which the restocked items should be sent. If you leave this column empty though, the restocked items will be sent back to the default location. In my case, I will be leaving this column empty so that the items are sent back to their default location. However, you can also add an inventory location that you would like the restocked items to be sent back to. That is completely up to you. Then moving on to the refund send receipt column. Here, the value can either be true or false. True if you would like to send an email about the refund to the customer, false if you do not. In my case, I have no customers linked to my orders, so I'm going to leave this empty, in which case it will default to the value false. However, if you do want to send an email notification to your customers about the refund, you can set the value to true for this column. If set to true, the Matrixify will trigger Shopify to send out the refund notification email. And finally, moving on to the last refund column in our file, which is refund generate transaction. The value for this column can also either be false or true. If true, the Matrixify will automatically generate a transaction for the refunds you are importing. Generally, what this means is that if these are customer placed orders, then a real refund transaction will be generated for this order. If set to false, no transaction will be generated. If this column is left empty when importing, the default value is true, which means a transaction will be generated for the refund. If you do not wish to generate a transaction, make sure to add the value false for this column. In my case, I'm going to leave the column empty, which means the default value will be true. And that would then be it. That is how to set your file up to import refunds with the Matrixify app. If all looks good and as it should, you can go ahead and save the file. Once your file has been saved, we can now head back to the Matrixify app to import our file. Here I am in the Matrixify app, and this is where we'll be importing the file that we just created. To do so, press Add File, select the file that we just created and saved, and press Open. Once the Matrixify app has analysed and uploaded your file, you should be able to see that the file has been correctly identified as orders, and then just check the total to make sure that the total matches the total orders that you are importing. In my case, it is correct. We are importing 3 orders. And if all looks good and as it should, you can go ahead and press import. So now going ahead and pressing the import button, you should be able to see your orders start to import. And now the import has finished, we can see that all 3 of our orders were successfully updated, which then also means successfully refunded. If on this page, once imported, you see any warnings or errors, You can view which orders these warnings or errors are for by downloading the import results file by clicking on the download import results button. In the import result and import comment column, which by default are at the end of the file, will show you what the exact error or warning is. If you do not understand an error or warning that may occur, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to help and will definitely help you figure it out to get your orders imported and refunded. But other than that, you can enjoy your updated and refunded orders. And if we head to our orders in our Shopify admin, we'll also be able to see that they're refunded or partially refunded, whatever the case may be. We also offer a written tutorial on how to refund your existing orders in bulk. I will link this in the description of this video, so you can head to this tutorial if you find it easier to follow a written tutorial rather than a video tutorial. This tutorial basically covers everything that I've gone over in this video as well. And if you do run into any issues at all or have any questions or queries, we will be more than happy to help. You can reach out to us either via Slack, where we also have an AI assistant that will help you, and if need be, then we will also jump in to help. You can also reach out to us via email at support@matrixify.app. We will reply to tickets within 25 hours, but it usually really is a lot quicker than 25 hours. And that would then be it from me. That is how you can refund your Shopify orders using the Matrixify app.